Hello party people and welcome back to my channel. So the year is 2018 and swinging into PlayStation 4s everywhere is our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Now I realize a good amount of gamers and streamers are probably playing Spider-Man Miles Morales right now, but I'm a firm believer that you have to walk before you can run, so I'm going to be playing this Spider-Man today instead of that one. Eventually we'll get to Miles, maybe. It is getting into the holiday season and eventually I do have to stop spending money on myself and start gift shopping for other people, so we might have to pause on that one, but that's okay. If you like today's video, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you too can stay up to date on the Sailor Single Player channel and when new videos are uploaded. Alrighty, I think that's it. I'm super excited to get into this game, so let's do this video game review of Spider-Man. So Spider-Man was released in 2018 by Insomniac, and much like many Spider-Man adaptations, you play as Peter Parker. But rather than high school Peter, you get young adult making that money, or rather struggling to make that money for rent Peter Parker. No worries, Peter, I still love you. Throughout the game, Peter works to clean up the crime of New York City, but we've got a new gang in town ready to stir things up. Things aren't always what they seem for Spider-Man and his band of assistants, including Mary Jane and Miles Morales, as they team up to stop the newcomers and other familiar villains along the way. Okay, so right off the bat, this game is stunning to look at. As I traveled through New York City, I was stuck in awe at the attention to detail and room for exploration in the open world map. I could easily see this game going down as one of the better examples of open world gameplay because the map is absolutely littered with little Easter eggs, side quests, and tokens. From its beautifully developed skyscrapers to freakishly large city rats, the open world exploration is a mini game all in itself for players to enjoy. So over the years, I haven't really been known to truly enjoy massive open world games because they tend to pull from the main plot of the game, and I easily forget what's going on in the story if I spend too much time on side quests. However, each side quest really only lasts a couple minutes, and there's so much to see and do that I enjoyed being able to pick and choose which trinkets I focused on and can control the amount of time I spent exploring rather than falling into side quests that could last for hours. While you don't have to commit to completing a side quest, some of the quests kind of leave you hanging in terms of their purpose. For example, there were times I would take a pause from the general plot and search the city for Black Cat's photo shoots. I didn't take the time to find all the shoots locations, and in doing so, I didn't really learn much about Black Cat and why she was in town or her quote-unquote plan. And she's not the only one this happens to. It didn't bother me too much. I guess I was just expecting some of those characters to tie back into the main story, but they kinda don't. And perhaps that leaves Insomniac room to integrate those characters into the series in future games. But I don't know, I'm not a developer. So speaking of the open map and exploring New York City, obviously your main mode of transportation is going to be web slinging throughout the town. To be honest, I'm a bit upset Spider-Man isn't a real person and web slinging isn't easily accessible to the everyday person because swinging from location to location was a blast in the game. I love the smoothish movement throughout the city as you travel from location to location. I will admit, I did struggle a bit with web slinging in the beginning and did get hit with some motion sickness every now and then, but once I got the general feel and developed more confidence, I was a decent web slinger. Now, I would need to take a break from time to time and walk among my New Yorkers every now and then, but that's besides the point. At times it felt like I was on a non-stop roller coaster throughout the city, which was pretty fun coming from a person who avoids roller coasters and has to pop a few Dramamine just to get on a plane. You know, it's fine. So while the web slinging was fairly awesome, there are a few mechanical things to kind of watch out for. First and foremost, the physics of swinging are a bit forgiving from time to time. This probably worked in my favor more often than not, but every now and then Spidey would get thrown in a random direction or latch onto a building I was trying to avoid if I got too close. The lack of fall damage is also kind of a nice plus here. Moving on to combat. For the most part, combat comes down to a few buttons. Great for me because I love button smasher games. Perhaps not as exciting for those gamers who want a little more complexity. Button smashing aside though, I think all those things can be overlooked when we talk about the animations that take place during the game. I don't know who on Insomniac's team animated all the different finishing moves and attack combos in the game, but that person or persons deserves a gold star. It felt at times each finisher and special move was created specifically for locations Spider-Man was in. I honestly might have been watching the same move over and over again, but it felt like the first time based off the way Spider-Man played with his environment and the odd numbers of ways you could throw enemies into buildings and wrap them up in a light post. I don't care who you are, but watching Spider-Man throw items at his enemies will never get old. Alrighty, so while I had mostly positive things to say about the mechanics, there were definitely a few things I really couldn't get past. I think the thing that annoyed me the most in the game was the sticky controls. I know, Spider-Man is a spider and sticking to buildings and objects is a thing. However, there were so many times I'd be in the middle of a battle or swinging throughout the city and Spidey would randomly latch onto a ledge or building and I had the hardest time getting him off said ledge. Like if I'm Spider-Man in mid-chase, should I really be latching onto a stoplight or street lamp when I'm chasing an armored vehicle? This became the most problematic when I was in the middle of a boss battle and I'd constantly have to start over because Spidey was a sitting duck on a pillar and became a static dartboard mid-battle. Just let Spidey move freely from object to object once he's reached them. My last note will be about the camera. Okay, so I understand there's a crap ton going on in this game, and web slinging is a huge part of battles and just general travel. That being said, I think the camera at times really couldn't keep up with what was going on the screen and what direction Spidey was heading. In a way, I think this can kind of be expected since general movement in the game can change pretty rapidly, but it did feel like among the numerous villains throughout the game, the camera was definitely one of them. Okay, so kind of starting to wrap up here because if given the opportunities, I could really talk about this game for a while, and I just don't want to do that to you guys. Let's get into the story. So for the most part, I think we are all generally aware of Peter Parker's story and the origin of Spider-Man. I'm glad the game didn't feel it necessary to regurgitate these details. And even if you're not aware of Spider-Man, you can easily grab onto what's happening and how we got here. It did take me a little while to get into the game, however. My last attempt at a Spider-Man game was the 2014 Spider-Man 2 game based off the film that had just came out, and sadly I just couldn't finish it. It just couldn't hold my 12-year-old's brain attention. The same wasn't true here though. Yes, it did take a little bit of time for the pacing to pick up, and I was a little worried the game would just be a fetch the criminal and move on to the next one type of game, but the pacing does pick up and the stakes do become a bit more heavy after about the first third of the game. And let me tell you, the game does get a bit heavy. I won't go too much into the story because I want to try my best to avoid spoilers, and honestly, after the first third of the game, it's just massive spoiler after massive spoiler. I will say I have heard a few folks complain about playing as Mary Jane. At first I was like, meh, it's not awful, but maybe not necessary, but at the end of the game, I'm kind of glad to have had the opportunity to play as her. I appreciate Mary Jane having a larger role in Spider-Man besides just being the lady that always needed saving, and I think in a way she has her own way to contribute to the story in a way that wouldn't work for Spider-Man, and I appreciate that we got the opportunity to explore that with her. Okay, so this kind of feels like a good place to leave Spider-Man without leaving too much on the table. I imagine if you have an interest in the game, you'll most likely play it at one point or another, or you've already played it. A few things to note if you haven't played just based off my experience. 1. Allow yourself plenty of time to grasp web slinging. A lot of the side quests and even mini tasks require web slinging, and speaking from a person who has yet to catch a bloody pigeon in the game, the extra practice can come in handy. And number 2, give yourself time to explore the map. There are a few moments in the game Spider-Man will suggest patrolling New York City, but those moments really only last a couple minutes before the story picks back up again. Putting it plainly, the game won't hand you the opportunity to do a deep dive of the map. You'll have to do that on your own at a moment that feels right to you. And there's so much to explore and check out in the game that it would be a shame to miss out on those details. Okay, so we did it. Spider-Man in the bag. Yeah, so would I suggest this game? Absolutely, if you're into superhero stuff. I think the mechanics are easy enough to grasp if given time, and the game is just so visually stunning to watch and engage with, I can even see backseat gamers enjoying watching it. All in all, it's a good time. Thank you so much for tuning into my video for Spider-Man. Again, if you liked today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you want to share your thoughts on Spider-Man, or if you have a game suggestion, plot those down in the comment box below. Other than that, I have more New York City exploring to do, so I'm gonna do that, and I will catch you guys next time for the next video. Bye!